All right, I'm super happy to be here with you all. You are going to get to learn all about negotiations in this session. This is not the kind of session where you can just sit back and relax. For the most part, you want to be like engaged as much as you can. If you can turn your videos on, that is great. As Liz already said, I love seeing your faces. You're going to be doing a negotiation in this session. Although if you really don't want to do it, you can just get into the breakout room with a partner and kind of go through it at least. So we're really going to do everything we can to get you to learn here. And so as you can see in this comic, negotiation is not a very easy process. It's a process that is fraught with a lot of peril. People sometimes feel very, very nervous about negotiating. So we're going to work through all of that. So to kind of get us into the mindset right away of negotiations, I want you to think about the last time you negotiated for something that you wanted. It's easy for me because I was telling everyone that I just came from a very contentious negotiation with my daughter's preschool, which we will not talk about, but I want you guys to think of it and write it into the chat. Just the kind of topic, it doesn't have to be a long explanation. What were you negotiating about? And if you're having trouble thinking of something, that means you're probably not negotiating enough. So we'll talk more about that too. Manny, I have that negotiation with my daughter all the time as well. Yes. What's out for lunch, Jenna? Sure. Yeah, maybe with their family. Cable bill. Here, finally, we get some work things coming up. The family negotiations come first. Liz, yes. You said yes. Energy contract. Arjun, we're talking about job offer negotiation today. So timely. Yeah, Lindsay, chores with a teenager. Oh my goodness. Lindsay, can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about that negotiation, if you feel comfortable?
I need to go somewhere where I'm not overheard.
Oh yeah, is your teenager
by the subjects? Yes.
And maybe she can get involved and give, his or her, view on it.
Right. That might lessen my negotiating power, though. The teenager is supposed to clear the dishwasher without being paid. That is just kind of part of living in our house. And he brought up that his allowance should increase as a result of an increase in chores. And our stance was no, that won't be happening.
Okay, so you've got like a very clear aspiration, and he has an aspiration. He wants to get paid for it. Seems reasonable. And how are you going to force him to do it? What's your plan?
Oh, have any ideas?
Maybe you can remind him everything else that you do for him that he gets for free.
Yeah, right.
To live in the house with you.
Right. We pay for gas for the car, we pay for all kinds of things. And if you really want to itemize those things, then yeah, we will gladly increase your income, and you also increase your expenses.
Yes. Okay, well, lots to think about there. That's a tough relationship, a tough negotiation, because you're in this relationship, it's going to be continuing. It's got to be very integrative in a way, right? Because, you've got to keep that relationship good. You're going to be living with that teenager for at least a little longer. But at the same time, you don't want to cede ground as a parent. So you've got like conflicting goals to kind of think about there. And then some people are chiming in on the chat with other ideas for you. Arjun, your job offer negotiation. Let's hear about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wrapping up. I wish I had this class like a week or two ago, but yeah, I mean, it's all the basics of like everything from negotiating the the compensation package, the job role in one case, and then now it's just down to more details like start date and those types of things. When I'm going to physically move, because I may have to physically move, just given COVID and all that stuff, it's down to those kind of items at this point.
Yeah, so I give my students like a handout that has like 40 different items for what to think about in a job negotiation. So there's many, many things to think about negotiating about, not just kind of the comp package. So I'm glad you're thinking about that a little more broadly. All right, well, let's kind of go through the role today and you'll see if there are tips and tricks you can think about for next time. All right, so just a note that I think about negotiation as any sort of conversation with anyone regarding something that you might have a goal for. This can be, you know, conversations with your spouse, could be work related, it could be even like mediating an argument between friends. And so this is, you know, think about it very, very broadly. We do this all the time. So it's an incredibly important skill. And then I usually ask this question afterwards, after you've kind of thought about the negotiation that you've been in lately, you know, are you winning or are you losing? Rather than having you just kind of put it in the chat, I'll just let you think about that. You know, did you win or did you lose? And one thing I definitely want to make clear is that a lot of people think about negotiations as only win or lose, but there's absolutely another way that you can think about it, which is that, you know, maybe it's possible for both people to feel like they've gotten something out of it, that they at least have the perception that they've both won. And if you are a sophisticated negotiator, you want to make sure that your counterpart believes that they have done okay, you know, that they got something, that they don't feel like they've lost. Right. And so I'll basically make the assertion right up front here that successful negotiations have no losers. If one party is feeling like they've lost, that's not going to be good for you, because what happens? What happens if one person feels like they've lost? And you can raise your hand, your real hand actually, or you could put it in the chat if you want. What's going to happen? Yeah, they're going to feel resentment. Harish, thank you. There's going to be a lack of commitment. They, even if you're never going to work with them again, they can still seek retribution, right? Because we live in this small world in which anyone can talk about anyone online, right? We're all kind of virtually interconnected here. And so you don't want to have that happen to you. Okay, so let's kind of talk about this basic framework. I'm just kind of giving you some negotiation fundamentals right here. So distributive negotiations are these ones that you think about as being more win-lose, and the grand majority of people tend to think about negotiations like this, kind of like a fight. And so when you run surveys with just like US participants in general, like 80% of them tend to think of it that way. For Haas students that come into my class, usually something like 60% of them in the surveys tend to think of negotiations this way. So these negotiations are characterized by being very short-term, win-lose in nature, you know, oppositional, and there's a single issue, as opposed to these integrative negotiations are things that are more long-term, with more than one issue. So I think, you know, when you're trying to figure out which of these am I in right now, you really want to think about, am I ever going to potentially see the other person again? Right? If you think there's even a chance that you might see them again, and sometimes it's hard to know for sure, right? Because again, it's a small world, you're probably more in the integrative negotiation space. And if you think that there's more than one issue at play, right? So if it's literally just money, then maybe that's more of the distributive negotiation, but usually you can be pretty creative and think about other issues involved. And then you're again kind of back into the integrative negotiation space. So we're really going to talk about integrative negotiations here. Job negotiations are super integrative because that relationship really matters. You don't want to burn your bridges. Okay, so those are very much in the integrative negotiation space. Those negotiations are a lot harder than distributive negotiations. So we talk about a set of skills that you learn to do distributive negotiations, like anchoring and, you know, claiming as much value as you can. And then for integrative negotiations, you need those skills because ultimately you are going to claim value, but you also need another set of skills which involve like growing the pie before you claim value. So all these kind of value creation skills. So you need both of those skill sets for integrative negotiations. And so that's why we usually kind of talk about mostly integrative negotiations. All right, so what does a successful negotiation look like? You know, you feel both parties are feeling like they've won, there's going to be repeat business, there's trust, you've managed emotions well, so you can see kind of all the psychology involved in the different pieces of this. Okay, so how do you learn to negotiate? How do you learn to be good at this? Right? That's kind of the key question here. And so there are books that you can read. These are some of the ones that I really love and I recommend, and I'm happy to send you guys a full list of books and articles after this. There are classes you can take, like you're in the right place already just from taking this little module. Maybe you could go do an actual like exec ed class to get a little bit more of this if you like it. And then of course you learn by doing, right? And so we always do a lot of practice in the classroom. June, I see you that you were in the classroom recently, and so you remember all of this. But so every single class we're doing cases. So in that note, we're going to practice right now, actually. And so let me kind of tell you a little bit about what this case is going to look like. All right, so you've been noticing that you're being renamed in Zoom. You have a 0 or 1 in front of your name. And that is not just a weird mistake that's happening. That is related to the case here. So the zeros are the bosses and the 1s are the candidates. Okay, so don't put any weighting on that as a value. That means nothing. All right, but this is what you've been assigned. I think it's pretty much random to be today. And so you are each getting information, instructions that you're going to read. And Danelle, just put them into the chat. Thank you so much, Danelle. And I'll show you what they look like. And so those are private instructions. So that's like, you're going to try to take on this role and kind of treat it as true to life as possible. And then at the end of the instruction sheet, there's some information about entering data. All right, so you're gonna take some time to first prepare for this negotiation. Okay, so preparation is a hugely important skill. We spend a lot of time on it in the classroom. I always say that the prep that you do before you even go into the negotiation is really valuable. It often determines the outcome of the negotiation itself, more than half the time, right? And you want to be the most prepared person in the room. All right, so you never want to have a experience where someone walks in the room and you have no idea who they are, right? You want to basically have done your prep and know everything. Okay, so what constitutes good prep for a negotiation? All right, so some really basic things. You want to set your aspiration point. All right, what's your aspiration point? That's something that should be optimistic but realistic. This is your goal for the negotiation outcome. Okay, you might want to think about it as a package of issues, right? So here's what I'm looking for on salary. Here's what I want for moving expenses. Here's what I want. Okay, a whole set of things. I don't want to give away too many issues for you to think about. All right, and so you come up and if you're really sophisticated, you'll make a couple of these different packages. Okay, that would seem good to you, that are similar in terms of like overall utility for you. All right, what's your resistance point? Your resistance point is the point at which you feel fine walking away from this negotiation. So I'm not going to continue. It's not worth it to me to be in this negotiation anymore. All right. So sometimes your resistance point is in part determined by what your BATNA is. Your BATNA is your best alternative to the negotiated agreement. All right, so what are your other options? What are you going to do if you can't work it out with this particular boss, Taylor? What other job are you going to take? Where are you going to go next? And so if you have some other good options to think about, those can help determine your resistance point. All right, sometimes you don't have good options to think about, or it's not really comparable. The options that you do have are not comparable. And so in those cases, your resistance point comes from another source. So maybe it's just reputation. Like, I just will not take a salary less than this because I just think it'll have long lasting effects that'll be, harmful for my career. So maybe that's what's determining my resistance point. Okay, now it's really important for the resistance point that you remember that in your negotiation and that you don't change it too much. If you feel like you've made an error and you want to change your resistance point, I highly recommend taking a little break, stepping aside, stepping away from the other person and saying, hey, I'm going to grab a coffee or something. And just going back to your prep and double checking everything and making sure that you actually do want to change that resistance point. Because when your resistance point becomes a sliding scale, that's going to be a potential problem for you. Okay, it's already kind of a red flag if you're focusing a lot on your resistance point. You really want to stay focused on your aspiration point in the negotiation. Okay, and then what's kind of your broader strategy going to be? How are you going to open, or maybe you're going to want the other person to open the negotiation. Usually for job negotiations, the company is going to open, right? So you're gonna let them give the offer. And then, how are you gonna kind of introduce the different issues? What order are you gonna go in? And so on. So there's a lot to think about here. And so that's why we're actually giving you a full 10 minutes to prep. And Danelle has a beautiful music list lined up. So there'll be some music playing in the background while you prep. You're going to spend 25 minutes then negotiating. So you're going to go into a breakout room with your partner, negotiate. We'll be kind of popping in and out of the rooms to check how it's going. You can also send us private chats in the chat window as you're preparing, and you might have some questions. And then you'll follow the instructions for entering data on the final page of the handout. Okay. All right, so when you're done, you will come into the main room. There will be another short break. And during that time, you can enter more data. Okay, so let me see if I can show this to you for a second here. Oh, you're seeing some notes. Okay, all right, so this is one of the cases. It's, the information's up here. I'm just gonna skim through it. You're not supposed to look at your partner's information. And then here's the instructions right at the bottom. Okay, so you're reporting your negotiation outcome in a Google spreadsheet, and then you're going to complete a private survey about your experiences. And then we're going to do a full debriefing, and we will talk about what happened, what you should have done, what are some good negotiation skills to think about. Okay? All right, any questions anyone has up front? You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Perfectly clear. We're going to take a stab at it. Yes. June, this is going to be a great review for you. You're an expert. Okay, Danielle, do you want to go ahead and just put up the music? Everyone can go ahead and turn off their videos if they want, and go read your negotiation case and do the prep. All right, so if you haven't finished entering your data, do not worry. You can keep doing it while I talk. I just want to get into the debriefing. We have 30 minutes left together, so I want to make sure to give you some more negotiation kind of fundamentals and what you do to really have a successful negotiation. Okay, so the debriefing is sometimes, the most fun part of this, where you can find out, what really happened and what you could have gotten kind of in the spectrum of things. All right, so we will look at both if I can get this to work, the job candidate and the boss in these different columns. Okay, so let's start with the boss, and we'll start with the positive things. All right, so believe it or not, candidates, the boss was very impressed with you. I mean, hopefully that came out. You guys have a good rapport going into this conversation. It's your third conversation. And so the boss really likes you. Taylor really likes you. All right, and the candidate actually thinks that this is the perfect job for them. Yes, even better than their alternative offer, which some of you might have heard. Okay, so this is actually the job that they prefer. All right, but there are, of course, concerns on both sides. Okay, so Taylor's wondering, hey, is Parker going to even come to New York, right? Parker maybe loves the sunny West Coast. They did their MBA there at some amazing school, possibly it was Berkeley. They're also concerned about a potential lack of industry knowledge. So does Parker kind of really, is he, considered more of an expert, he or she, these are gender neutral names. Are they considered more of an expert in the field, or should they be more of a kind of novice, kind of put at the low end of the salary spectrum? So this is a real challenge for Parker to convince Taylor that you deserve to be on the high end of the salary spectrum scale, because you actually do have relevant knowledge that will fit. And even though you haven't worked in this particular industry for a long time, you have a lot of knowledge that you can kind of bring to the table. So that's something that you have to convince them of. And some people do it really well, and some people have trouble with it. Now, Parker, you have a few other things going on. You have some cash flow problems, right? You're thinking about moving expenses, and you don't really have enough money on hand to cover that right now. So that's important for you. And of course, you care about salary. You're a little bit concerned about the salary at this job. Okay, so preferred location. So kind of getting into some of the key issues here. So of course, they're located in New York. And then what does Parker want for their location? Do they want to be on the West Coast, or do they want to be on the East Coast? Parker's course, you want to be in New York, actually. Okay, so if you had a candidate who was saying, oh, I don't know that I want to be there, but I'll come for more salary or whatever, that means that they were sandbagging you. Sandbagging is, a key concept in any negotiation. That's what happens when one person lies about their true preferences in order to get something more out of the other person. It's what we call a gambit. There are many different gambits that you'll see in negotiations, everything from playing, good cop, bad cop, etc. Now, those are little tricks that don't usually work well in long-term contexts. Okay, so not something that you really want to take out in an integrative negotiation. If you're in a really distributive negotiation, you could consider it. Here, it's probably not going to go that well for you. There's a big danger when you sandbag of ending up with an outcome that you actually don't even want. Okay, so that's the thing. If you lie about your preferences, it really confuses things. It makes it hard to grow the pie. And in a lot of integrative negotiations, you're going to have a relationship with the other person moving forward, and they might figure things out about you, such as the fact that your fiance, Parker, is over in New York. So that's something that the boss will probably learn eventually. So it probably wasn't wise of you to lie about that if you did that. Okay, salary. So candidates, did you ask Taylor to explain how the salary works at the company and to tell you a little bit about the different salary bands? Just to educate yourself. Did you ask those hard questions? All right, and then Taylor's, did you convey that information honestly? Right, so there's really no reason to particularly hide it. You can assume that the candidate will often find out about that, right? Lack of transparency. There's been a lot of studies that usually doesn't work well for companies. Okay, and so you see Parker very rightfully as being in the lower experience band bosses, and so you should have been thinking of a salary that's more on the lower end of the scale here. You probably had an aspiration of around 93,000 for what you thought you wanted to pay Parker. All right. Now, Parker, on the other hand, is thinking about some different numbers, right? So this wouldn't be like a fun negotiation if you didn't start from different places a little bit. Okay, so Parker knows that the average industry salary is 100 to 105K. They have some knowledge that the company is doing pretty well. They even have some friends over investment banking who are telling them to accept nothing less than 120K. All right, all these numbers I think are a little bit low at this point, but the investment banking friends are leading you astray here. All right, you don't want to compare across different industries, apples and oranges. All right, so that was kind of a red herring in the case. But regardless, you have some different views about how to think about salary here. Okay, start date. So Taylor wants to start earlier. Taylor's, why do you want to start earlier? Marco, were you a Taylor? Yeah. Can you share
Let me
with us?
unmute. I couldn't find the button. So yeah, I have to go on vacation. I have a sabbatical coming up, and I don't want to move my my trip. Also, it would be very good for Parker to be there early on to get some industry knowledge. And while I'm gone, that's a great time for him to develop a relationship and ramp up with the industry. So when I'm back from a trip, we can start working together. So it's very important to get that time frame right. Otherwise, there could be a little problem because I will be burned out.
Marco, that was great. So you explained the true reason, you were honest, but you also had, more explanation in there about other reasons why you thought it would be good for Parker to start early. So you did a really beautiful job kind of representing the boss side. Excellent. Yeah, sometimes we get Taylors that just lie entirely. They don't want to reveal their sabbatical for some reason, even though, of course, Parker's going to find out about that when they join, and probably will not be happy. So
yeah, I didn't bring it up, going on sabbatical or anything, but I was honest that it was very important for me to get an early start. And
yeah. By the way, lying in negotiations, and we'll just, I see a hand raised, but let me just make this broader point. We spent a whole class talking about lying in negotiations and the full-time MBA. And It's something that's basically when you feel weak, you do it. And people that are weak and they don't really know what else to do and aren't prepared will lie. It's, usually not the best option. Usually, even to your point, Marco, sometimes you don't need to reveal certain information and not necessary to reveal it, but lying is just sort of a position of weakness. And if you think that you're being lied to, you want to start asking a lot of probing questions. You want to lean into it. So sometimes people just aren't really sure what to do. And so they don't, they kind of have to, they're puzzled and they're not sure. So they don't want to ask questions about it, but rather you really want to lean into it. So if you think Marco's lying about something, you want to start asking him more and more and more about it, right? Because you want to catch him in the lie. And lies are hard to maintain because people have to keep a lot of details straight in their mind. And so you'll start to kind of get down to a point at which you realize that the person's not telling you the truth. Okay, but this is not something that you want to be doing in your negotiations. That's worst case scenario for you. A lot of times novice negotiators, when they're asked a question and they're not prepared, they'll just blurt something out, and sometimes it's a lie. It's not, you never want to be in that situation yourself. Okay, Derek, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. During the negotiation of the compensation package, I did mention if Ronak, that's Parker, who is going to be hired by me, then 3 years down the road, he will get 6 weeks of a sabbatical. And so it's a segue when we talk about the start time. And he did mention very honestly, he's planning to take, vacation. I did tell him that, I want my sabbatical based on mental health reasons. So yeah, I think it's being very honest, and we are able to come to middle point when he fully agreed to just, forget about his vacation and start working early. So,
Derek, that's another really nice way to spin it. So you talked about how this is a big positive for being at the company. It's really great that they give a sabbatical every 3 years. That's fantastic. And so, think about that, Parker, as you're considering your options, right? So that's another way to kind of spin it. Parker, now you want to be starting late. So going over to your view, you would prefer to start in September. All right, so why does Parker prefer to start in September? Harry, why do you want to start in September? Oh, Harry just went away. Oh, we just lost him. There he is.
Hey.
That's okay.
It's
the fun
I
of
got
Zoom,
a vacation. I have a Euro trip, summer vacation before. I never have a long trip the rest of my life.
You're taking a vacation, you've bought the plane tickets, they're non-refundable. So that's something that can go right into the negotiation. Can you refund the plane tickets, right?
We don't know the cost of the plane ticket.
Right, well, you'll have to estimate. That's a good point. Right, but that's something that you can talk about, right? So if I'm gonna miss this vacation that I've been planning for so long, I think it makes sense to see if we can refund the price of the tickets there, right? And the company, Taylor, you do have a little leeway in what you're able to give them. Let's talk about some of these kind of extras. All right, so one is moving expenses. Actually, Taylor, thank you, Harry, for that. Taylor doesn't really have anything in their case much about moving expenses. They know that one other person moved and was able to get $5K from that. So maybe this is kind of an anchor point for them in the case. It's not really clear what the policies are at the company level. Now, Parker, it's much clearer what they want for the moving expenses. It's really high priority for them. So they've got that little cash flow issue. And so they're looking for 9K there. All right. So you sometimes see tailors that this is a place where you can get a lot of ambiguity. So tailors that are saying, okay, I don't see a policy here. So I guess we can probably give you the 9K. Other tailors kind of holding the line for some reason at 5K or nothing. Or maybe you talk about a bonus as being a potential to cover this. All right, so candidates don't know anything about the bonus, so it's not in their case. All right, so candidates, if you never asked about the bonus or got there's never any conversation about it, you lost value, you lost something that you could have gotten. All right, now for tailors, it might have been wise to kind of wait. That's kind of this extra value add that you can provide. And so you want to wait until later in the negotiation to reveal that and see where it's going to be most useful, right? And so as you're starting to think, okay, well, they're looking for more moving, or maybe they need these plane tickets refunded. What can I do to manage that, maybe I can use the bonus to kind of cover some of this, right? So tailors that started right out with, here's your salary and here's your bonus, you're giving stuff away right there. Okay, so it can be between 5 to 10%. And so again, you'll see a range of outcomes here where some candidates were able to get all the way to the 10%. Some of them were not able to get there. All right, so you kind of see where you're going to land on the spectrum here. Okay, and then finally, what are your alternatives? All right, let's hear from a tailor about their alternatives. Renata, what was your alternative option, your best alternative option?
Yeah, I mean, the next one was a candidate who was 105 and they weren't a good company fit potentially. So I felt like it just wasn't a good option to hire somebody that was like going to be more expensive and then maybe just a bad hire in general.
Yeah.
So it didn't have a good BATNA.
Yeah, and they're from Harvard, so not so great. There's nothing that exciting about this person. All right, so not such a great BATNA. By the way, in the candidate's case, in Parker's case, they are concerned that Taylor wants someone from Harvard, but turns out that Taylor doesn't particularly want that, at least in this case. And then Parker's, I'll just go ahead and reveal yours. You have this alternative offer from a San Francisco consulting company for a slightly higher salary, so 108K, but you don't really like it. Okay, so actually neither of you have particularly strong BATNAs. I'll just make a broader point right now about the BATNAs. This is your greatest source of power and strength in a negotiation. Just think about any negotiation you've ever had. When you have a really strong other option that you can go to, you feel really powerful walking into the room. We sometimes get in some of the cases, the person who has the really strong BATNA, they don't even really want to do the negotiation. Why should I even bother to have a conversation with this person who doesn't really mean that much to me? And then if you have a very weak BATNA, you're going to feel not at all confident, not at all powerful. Like, what's my leverage? Okay, the thing to remember if you have a weak BATNA is that the other person doesn't know. The other person does not know, and I'll just stop the share for a second. The other person does not know what your BATNA is, okay? So that is not something that you have to reveal. In fact, I'll just say that you really don't want to reveal your BATNA that much at all, okay? So even if you have a strong BATNA, a really good one, you really don't want to reveal that. That's really powerful, like information that should be private information that you don't reveal unless you're at an impasse. Okay, so if you have a weak BATNA, you never reveal it. Okay, that's not something that you really want to be in the negotiation. Why do you not reveal a weak BATNA? What do you guys think? I'll call on Doug Young. How about you?
Well, yeah, I would say if you reveal the weak BATNA, then the whole dynamic may change, right? And so, for example, who knows? Maybe Parker would be wondering, do I really want to work for this firm if they don't have any other candidates, right? Or if I'm Taylor, and I realize that that Parker doesn't have a lot of options, then maybe I'd be thinking, gee, maybe she isn't as skilled as I thought she was.
Yeah, so if someone reveals an alternative to you, first of all, you've got a lot of information now. So now you're kind of, okay, this might be determining their resistance point. You want to spend the whole negotiation learning about the counterpart's resistance point, because ultimately you want to push them to their resistance point. That's where you're setting your aspiration. You want to kind of get the full zone of possible value. And that means that you want to get as close to your partner's resistance point as possible. Right. So, for the bosses, like your aspiration here would be maybe around 93K, you won't pay that much. And maybe your resistance is that you'd be willing to go up to like 105. And so candidates, if you can get up to that 105, that's good for you. Right. And for candidates, your aspiration is something like 108K or maybe a little bit higher. And maybe your resistance is like you don't want to go over 100. Right. And so remember the space between the resistance points, that's your zone of possible agreement. Okay, so that's the part that matters in the negotiation. So in the thing I just outlined, I wish I had a graphic to show you, but I just outlined something where you have a positive zone of possible agreement. The boss is willing to go up to 105, the candidate's willing to accept down to 100. Therefore, you have that 5K zone of possible agreement, right? So that's good. You've got something you can work with. If it turns out that you have a negative zone of possible agreement where your resistance points don't overlap, you don't want to come to an agreement. It's better for you not to come to an agreement at all. And sometimes, having a good negotiation is also knowing when to walk away. Okay. Now, as going back to the BATNA, thank you, Doug. When you talk about your BATNA, you're giving away information potentially about your resistance point. All right. And if someone were to tell me about their BATNA, I would start asking questions about it. That's what a smart negotiator would do. You got to start asking questions. All right. And so I saw this happen in a negotiation. I think it was Leah in June, where I think Leah was asking some really good questions, some hard questions for you, June, where you revealed your BATNA, and then she was really kind of digging in and starting to ask you about it. Oh, so tell me more about that, right? And so you want to learn as much as they're willing to give you, right? So, so you have another candidate that you're thinking about giving an offer to, like, what salary is he asking for, and let's try to get some information about this. Right? Because if they're revealing that information, you should really dig into it, right? And then, Doug, to your point, if it turns out it's a pretty weak BATNA, you should figure that out. You say, oh, wait a minute, like that person is from Harvard? And I'm kidding. But whatever sort of the weaknesses that you find, you really want to kind of dig into that and exploit that, right? And then that puts them in kind of a position of weakness, because you're like, okay, your other option that you're telling me about is like really not that great. So I think I'm a better fit. And so now you feel powerful, right? Like by revealing that weak BATNA, you've made the other person feel really powerful. All right, so it's really not something that you ever want to do. Now, what if you have like a great BATNA? It's awesome. You still want to be really careful about revealing it. You reveal it when you're at an impasse, like you're really not getting what you want in the negotiation. You've tried really, every other thing that you can think of, and the person just is not budging. Then maybe it's time to educate them a little bit that you actually have a lot of power, right? But you actually want to be very careful about the way that you do it, because anytime a person reveals a BATNA, it can sound like a threat, right? You're like, well, I have another offer at the San Francisco company, or I've got this other candidate. All right, and that seems kind of threatening. You start to, basically antagonize the counterpart. They're like, well, why are we talking then if you really want to be at the San Francisco company, right? And so you don't want to make that sound like a threat. Whenever you're at the table with someone doing a negotiation, you want to get the very best deal that you possibly can out of them, and then step away and start to kind of think through your options. You don't want to just ruin that as an option during the conversation. Go ahead and have the conversation. You're there having it, and get the best deal you can, and don't sort of scare away the counterpart. Okay, later on you can go back and think, okay, maybe this wasn't the best possible deal. All right, but don't just ruin it at the table. Okay. So that was all the information. So let's go ahead and take a look at what you did, how you did. All right. So I'm not sure what happened with the numbering here, but your names are in here, so that's fine. We can find you. All right. So everyone hired Parker. That's a good outcome. Sometimes these negotiations will crash and burn, and Parker will say, I just don't want to work there, or Taylor will say, we rescind the offer. So this is already a good sign that Parker got hired in every case. On the whole, when I look at these are more on the starting salaries are more on the low end of what I usually see. So in general, it seems like the Taylors were doing a little better than the Parkers. Sometimes Parker, just by being in the candidate position, you feel kind of a little weak. You feel like you don't have strength, and so that that can be a reason why that happens here. However, I noticed here that William got to 104K starting salary. So let's hear a little bit about that negotiation. William, how did you do it?
Well, I definitely leveraged the competing offer in San Francisco, which is actually, I think it's probably about the same cost of living, but I described it as lower. Just described the range of, I think it was like 90 something to 115. So 104 kind of is, right in the middle.
Renata, do you mind if I bring you into this?
Yeah.
So did you find out that they have a fiance living in New York?
Did not.
Yeah. So did you find out that they wanted to be in New York, or was that not information?
No, he was kind of on the fence about New York. I was trying to sell him on New York. I was like, no, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, so
I told her I was going to live in my car because New York's so expensive. So
yeah, so is San Francisco.
You know, the salary. Oh, yeah, so both of them are expensive. That's why I live in the car in San Francisco too. So I needed to move my car over.
Williams doesn't sound good. Yeah, so Renata, I think you would want to say, okay, well, you know, if they're bringing out their bat, and this is just exactly what we talked about. Start asking a bunch of questions about it. Oh, so San Francisco is where you really want to live, right? Is that right? You know, tell me about why you're passionate about San Francisco, and let me tell you about New York, right? And you know, at some point, he's probably going to run out of things to say about San Francisco because he actually wants to be in New York. You know, you really want to kind of like dig into that. And so you got lied to a little bit here. It was a sort of a subtle lie, but that's something that you want to really dig into. Okay. And think about, you know, well, if this company is offering 108K, what are the other things that we can offer? Okay, so let me look at one that kind of ended on the other side of the other spectrum. So there are a couple like 95Ks here. Oh, how about Joshua and Jenna? Jenna, I'll start with Jenna. How was your kind of strategy here? What did you end up doing? Is Jenna here? Jenna left. Joshua, are you here?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, maybe you can just talk about it for a second. How did this go?
So on this, I opened with, well, first of all, I expressed how excited I was to have her potentially join the team and all the good feedback that I received from her prior interviews. Explained to her how I see how much growth there is for her in her career starting at our company, and some of the amazing mentorship opportunities that I'm ready to present and, you know, have her participate in as a brand new MBA product manager.
It sounds like you had a very strong opening. Go ahead.
Exactly. And then I opened with an opening with that, opened up with an offer, the base salary at 90K. And she actually didn't balk too much on that. I
still wish she were here so we could talk to her. So, you know, I'll just talk to the Jennas of the world. You know, you really want to advocate for yourself. That's 90K is way out of your range. Here's another kind of high level piece of advice. So if someone opens with something that you think you really cannot do, so as a candidate coming into this, 90K would be something you really think you can't do. You want to wipe that offer immediately. So, you know, Jenna would say, I'll be Jenna. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to work here. That all sounds fantastic, but I have to tell you right away, 90K is just not going to work for me. That's just not what I, you know, had in mind. I cannot possibly do that salary. Do you want to still keep talking? Like, just like right like that, you know? And that's a really strong move, because I'm really just asking, like, is it even worth it for us to keep talking right now? And then you would say, oh, yeah, we can talk more. And, you know, and so this puts the ball in your court. It kind of signals to you right away that that's just not going to work. And then I, as Jenna, could either go ahead and reset. I was thinking of something more in the range of 105K. You know, I'm going to reset it to my aspiration. Or you, Josh, I might just pause and be quiet and let you, Joshua, give me another offer. Sometimes it can be really powerful to let the other person just negotiate with themselves if you're silent, right? And then the other thing that can happen is we talk about how negotiators, you don't want to go issue by issue, because you can hit impasses more often. You really want to think about positions. Why do people have that, the motivation behind why people have that particular position? And you want to talk about packages. All right. So if you go issue by issue, usually start with money, because money's the biggest thing usually, and you're going to seem like you're at an impasse. So Joshua, you said 90K. I, as Jenna said, 105K. So it feels like we're out of very much an impasse there. And so what I would do as a smart negotiator, I'd say, okay, let's talk about some of the other things, right? I'm going to start adding in issues. Let's talk about location. Let's talk about moving expenses. Let's talk about start date. And as we start talking about those things, we're forming more of a package, and then we can come back to bring salary into it later. Okay. All right, so I realize we're running a little low on time here. You guys can always take a look at some of these great outcomes. It's good that everyone probably Parker, so overall that's pretty good. And then we can look at some of your responses, private responses. Everyone's seen the Negotiation Genius survey for the candidates, right? Okay, and so we have most of the candidates saying that they wanted to go to New York. I think we already heard from William, who's living in his car in California. Okay, how satisfied do you feel with the outcome? Unfortunately, we can't actually see the names here. So maybe you can debrief with your partner afterwards and kind of talk with them about it. It's not, not too bad here. And then how good will the relationship be moving forward? Actually looks pretty good. That's great. Remember, this is successful negotiation. You want it to be good moving forward. All right. And if you're not satisfied candidates with the outcome, this is kind of classic job negotiation. The next thing you want to do is think about when the next conversation will be. Can you accelerate the promotion cycle? When am I going to have a chance to have this conversation again? That didn't go as well as I wanted, and companies feel squeezed if you negotiate with them over and over and over again. The recruiters always tell us they hate that. So really in terms of the negotiation for a job offer, it happens once, maybe twice, depends on your relationship with the hiring manager or the recruiter. But don't think of it as going on forever, right? If it's not going that well, you're going to think about, okay, next steps. What's it going to look like when I'm at the company? How can I get another conversation with the boss to kind of revisit some of these issues? And then here's the boss. Okay, so half the bosses actually lied about the early start date. Professional experience was an asset. So the grand majority, and this fits perfectly with the data, the grand majority of you are saying that you don't really see it as an asset. So candidate, it's on you always to prove why you would be an asset at the job. Okay, and then salary bands, candidate, you always want to try to find out as much as you possibly can about the salary structure, the bands, et cetera, either up front or in the conversation with the hiring manager, if you have a good relationship with them. Okay, and one person is not going to be good, but otherwise it's looking okay. All right, let me bring back up the slides. Okay, we're kind of at time, so I'm not going to be able to kind of go through this stuff at a high level. I'll just kind of leave you with a few points. Okay, for claiming value, anchoring, you want to be the one to kind of start the conversation. In this case, the candidate can't start the conversation, but still you want to basically redirect the conversation, kind of take control over it again. All right. And you don't want to be focused on your resistance point. That's kind of a red flag. And then for creating value, the interest versus the positions, we kind of talked about that in terms of figuring out the person's motivation underlying the positions. And we talked about you want to negotiate in terms of packages instead of issue by issue. Okay, so that is all I have for you. Thank you so much. This was really fun. This is kind of a whirlwind Zoom experience. I hope you all enjoyed your negotiation. And you can always reach out to me. Here's my email address if you have any more questions.